Alright, so the next proper video essay is a little bit delayed because it's just a much longer video, there's a lot more to do for it, and initially I was gonna just let it slide without making an extra video because, frankly, I could use a little bit of rest. However, I then realized that I actually do have a topic that I can make a quick video about. Something I wouldn't really merit like a full-length, proper video essay, whatever, but nonetheless it's a topic that I think deserves coverage. This video is also incidentally like the fourth time that I've written an Overwatch esports related video script and then had some bombshell news immediately happen, so I'm very sorry. At this point it might actually be my fault that the Overwatch League is dead, I've probably jinxed it. However, this video isn't about that. This video is about a much more important topic. Why is the Florida Mayhem posting Yeehan on main? To get you up to speed, aside from the general Rule 34-ness of Overwatch over the years, there have been a few fan communities built around shipping specific heroes with one another. You know, Pharah and Mercy are Pharmercy, Genji and Mercy are Gensi, Reaper and Soldier are R76, Baptiste and Lucio are Bapsio, the list goes on. And it's not like it's unheard of for Overwatch League teams to engage with the community from time to time, whether it's, memes, discourse, joking about a team disappearing in a mysterious puff of smoke and refusing to explain what's happening for months. But they don't generally get involved in shipping stuff, unless it's like, I don't know, very safe, literally canon, or part of the game along the lines of Loverwatch. Yeehan, or as I call them, Hole, is the pairing of Hanzo and Cole Cassidy. I'll be brave and honest with you right now and say I've just never really been super invested in shipping communities, Overwatch or otherwise, despite being a big fan of the art that it produces, don't get me wrong. But Yeehan as a pairing has been a pretty prevalent one even, from my ignorant perspective. If you asked me to explain the appeal, I'd probably just say that the concept of this Wild West cowboy falling in love with a brooding, moody Japanese ninja just sounds fun. It's very West meets East, Romeo and Julius, opposite attract kind of vibes. Plus, it's gay, and if you know anything about shipping culture, you know that they love their headcanons about boys kissing boys and girls kissing girls, regardless of a character's canonical sexuality. And they're right to do so. Now, I wasn't sure exactly when this started, but a while back I started noticing a couple Overwatch League teams posting Yeehan stuff. And not like in a particularly subtle way. For a while, I figured it was just like a bit for Pride Month whenever it came up on my timeline, since that seemed to be when I began noticing it. Especially because after both Baptiste and Pharah were confirmed to be queer, the running joke on Twitter seemed to be, okay, well, if they're doing fan service, who's going to be next? And the obvious target was Yeehan. However, that's just the community. They're always doing unhinged shit. Brand Twitter is a very different story. Like, I can post a picture of me and my Yeehan crop top on Twitter and there's no corporate consequences, but if you're an Overwatch League social media manager, you can't just, shitpost. It's your job. Your employer expects a certain level of professionalism as well as results. That doesn't mean they're perfectly straight-laced or anything. We all remember when Life Weaver came out and it seemed like everyone with a professional relationship to Blizzard had a contractual obligation to be horny on main for him, but shipping culture is... well, it's different. It's still kind of seen as this weird fringe thing by a lot of people, and given how wild it can get, it's usually just safer for brands to steer clear. The incentives in social media management are pretty straightforward. You want to get as much engagement as possible from your target demographic in a way that keeps it tied to the brand identity in a tangible way. Not all press is good press, and if a tweet goes viral beyond its intended audience, or alienates that intended audience, that's not good. For a lot of social media managers, this kind of manifests as having two categories of posts, two genres. There's the serious ones that are about communicating information about their brand to the audience that they've reached, who, need that information, and the engagement bait stuff that's meant to expand their reach and help them connect with more people from their intended target audience. For example, an Overwatch League social media manager might tweet out their schedule for the weekend, and that would be a serious tweet, and then they might also go and roast Bad Pachimari for his predictions as engagement bait. And I'm not saying engagement bait in a derogatory way, to be clear. It's social media managing, and a big part of effective social media work is finding that balance between casting a wide net to bring people in so you can get the serious tweets to as many people as possible, because those are really the ones that matter. You could compare it to... I don't know, hypothetically, let's say, a VTuber who gets lewd art made of their model to post on Twitter in order to try and attract more followers, and then following it up by tweeting their schedule or a link to their Twitch or their YouTube channel to try and convert the thirst follows into more valuable forms of engagement for their brand. Now, from what I've heard, the Overwatch League social media managers posting about Yeehan goes back a little ways, with one specific team on TikTok apparently posting about it for a while, but I legitimately cannot find any proof of it prior to June 1st on Twitter, so either they deleted it or people were just mistaken. But that was when the Florida Mayhem account posted this tweet as a joke about the Pride profile pictures being added to the game. They changed their profile picture and banner on Twitter to Yeehan stuff, alongside jokingly calling themselves Mayhem when they were celebrating a win, and then they decided to stick with the Yeehan branding even after Pride Month was over, saying they lost their old branding and were sticking with this. If you go check their account right now, they're probably still using the same stuff, actually. And now if you're like me in terms of being active on Twitter and kind of passively following Overwatch accounts that are related to Overwatch League or Yeehan or both, you probably thought they were posting this stuff at least semi-regularly, or that there were more teams or whatever. But it turns out no, not really. Boston Uprising tweeted this picture of Ramatra and Zenyatta making a Roomba together in early June, but that didn't really go anywhere, and as far as I can find, the only other Yeehan posting was a back and forth between Mayhem and the Titans in the middle of July. A lot of the people I've asked about it seemed actually kind of surprised there hadn't been more of it, because it seemed like it was a lot more prevalent, and that is actually what we're here to talk about. This video isn't really just about Yeehan, unfortunately. It's really about how a small, vocal, and active social media community can punch way above their weight class when it comes to influencing how brands act on social media, and how that can help steer the narrative in ways that, don't really reflect the size of the communities involved, and how both parties are kind of playing a game of chicken when it comes to this. The first thing that has to happen for any of this to work out is finding a viable group and also a viable brand for that group. The Stargazers probably can't convince Walmart to tweet out some cyborg artwork no matter how hard they try. The group needs to be part of a specific enough target audience, so you need a brand that has a specific enough target audience. With an Overwatch League team like Mayhem, they're looking for people who are interested in Overwatch beyond just the game itself, and especially given the state of the league right now, they're probably really looking for people who are going to go ride or die for them. Once you've found a brand with a focused enough target audience, you need to find a group within that audience that shares a few characteristics. For one, they need to have a unifying identity that's easy to identify and connect to, and it needs to be possible to connect with that group without significantly alienating other members of your target audience. Like, okay, are there Trump supporters within the target audience of the average Overwatch League team? Obviously, probably a good number of them. But any attempt to cater to them directly is going to alienate a lot of people in a way that'll outweigh probably any gains that they could get from it, and you don't want that. Trying to cater to a particular ship is also sometimes pretty difficult because of the reasons we mentioned before. Even though it might not alienate people who don't care about shipping that much, it could definitely alienate people who are hyper invested in another ship that has a conflict with what you're posting about. For example, if you're like a ride or die Pharmacy shipper and Mayhem starts tweeting about Gensi, it might push you away even as it brings in Pharmacy shippers. And since there's no way to realistically know, how big either of those groups are, how invested they are, which one is the better, trade-off, it's impossible to predict what the right call is there, so it's best to not make one. You also need to be able to weigh it against your other options for engagement bait. An Overwatch League team can't just, openly shit on Blizzard the way an independent creator can, so that's off the table. You also can't just constantly shit on Mercy mains, since you'd be alienating them without really attracting anyone new, since there's already plenty of places to get those hot takes. You can't just post about Overwatch League, since frankly, those posts don't tend to get a lot of engagement. And you can't just endlessly praise Blizzard either, because you'll end up alienating the people who are always angry about something or another with the game. Using ships for engagement is kind of, honestly, one of the safest options for an Overwatch League team, purely because it's an easy way to get a reliably high level of baseline engagement without having to resort to negativity or anything that's going to be, too alienating. However, when it comes to shipping, especially, Yeehan, there's also another dimension. A lot of the popular ships in Overwatch are queer, and there are also a lot of homophobes in the world, and queer people are a relatively small umbrella group where the constituent identities don't always overlap with one another in terms of their interests. Ideally, you want to find a way to get the best of both worlds, and in this case, you need something that is queer, but also kind of has the, straight bros acting gay, but it's fine because they both know it's a joke because they're both straight energy. If you're a queer man, this is the why are the popular guys calling me a slur when I'm literally going out of my way to be as non-gay as possible, but then constantly acting gay with each other and no one bats an eye phenomenon that you probably witnessed in high school. If you pick a ship with a confirmed queer character, that dynamic kind of goes out the window. And with Pharah and Bap both being confirmed to be queer, that kind of, process of elimination leaves you with Yeehan. If you're a fan of the ship, you win. If you're a fan of a different ship, Yeehan doesn't really conflict with any of the especially popular ones, especially since it's also compatible with others like, Bapsio or Mautiste. If you're not really into shipping stuff specifically, or even queer people in general, but you're not a raging homophobe or a complete hater, you can still have fun with the memes about it, especially now that teams are doing it to each other and turning it into a bit of a game of gay chicken. However, again, you need a strong group to appeal to with this. Boston Uprising's tweet with Ramatra and Zenyatta got a bunch of engagement, sure, but it was mostly just because it was funny. There's a reason why they didn't keep posting that stuff, and it probably has a lot to do with the fact that Ramatra and Zenyatta don't really have a shipping community in that way. A lot of people engaged, but it was based mostly off the fact that they were posting something out of left field, and the nature of that kind of appeal is you can't just keep retreading old ground. However, when Mayhem was posting about Yeehan, they brought in the Yeehan shippers, a group of people that I can tell you firsthand are like fucking bloodhounds when it comes to finding any reference to their ship and blowing it up, and they tend to stick around. But why are they like this? Not sure. Honestly, if I had to guess, I think it's maybe a combination of being part of a long-term shipping community that's just been basically edging themselves for most of a decade over Yeehan and haven't really gotten any official crumbs the way that R76, Mautiste, or Pharmacy have. And also the fact that they're kind of playing their own game of gay chicken with Mayhem to see how far they'll really take it, so they kind of just want to stick around and see what happens. The first Mayhem tweet was clearly a joke, but after the positive response it received, the second one seemed like it was, genuinely testing the waters a little bit to see if people were actually receptive to it or if they were just memeing the way people did with the Boston Uprising thing. And then, the second one went over pretty well too, but maybe it's just a pride thing. So they posted the third tweet in July about not being able to swap it back, and when that also got a good reception, they kind of seemed to settle on it as being part of their social media presence on Twitter. Then, the tweets back and forth with the Titans are, yet another test on two fronts. First, in terms of whether other teams could get similar engagement off the same trick, and whether or not the Yeehan shippers would continue to show up. The fact that people seem to think it was happening a lot more often is kind of a reflection of the fact that it was effective. Because a lot of people were seeing those Yeehan posts on their timelines even if they weren't actively seeking them or the Florida Mayhem out, because people kept engaging with that shit and putting it back on their timelines. Yeehan shippers are obviously a very small part of the Overwatch community in the grand scheme of things. In terms of the broadest possible audience that Overwatch League teams might be trying to appeal to, they're certainly part of it, but ultimately they're pretty much a fringe group. And I don't say that again as an insult, that's just, we're talking numbers here. And yet, there's an Overwatch League team catering specifically to them with at least some of their content, largely driven by the fact that the Yeehan shippers are aggressive about engaging with that content and establishing a positive feedback loop on both sides. Brands get more engagement when they post Yeehan stuff, so they want to post more Yeehan stuff, and Yeehan shippers want to see more Yeehan stuff, so even more likely to engage with content from the Mayhem if they think it'll help them get more of it. And to be clear, this cycle isn't, unique to the Mayhem and Yeehan shippers. If anything, it's just, extremely normal anywhere where engagement is a valuable metric. It was a big part of the 2016 US presidential cycle where Trump initially started out as a fringe candidate with little support, but because he had a habit of saying unhinged shit, people would tune in to watch when he did interviews or was part of debates. That meant that news companies had an incentive to bring him on as often as possible compared to the more boring Republican primary candidates, since even if he said something heinous that they were going to condemn, a lot of people would tune in to watch whatever he was going to say and then their response to it. It also normalized what he was saying and his campaign promises a lot. I mean, after all, CNN wouldn't have someone on who was really that extreme, right? It elevated him to becoming a viable candidate and eventually winning the primary, and the cycle continued throughout the race to the White House. During his presidency, you could do the same thing and reliably turn him into easy engagement content from either angle. You could criticize and mock him, which was what basically every late-night TV host did from 2016 to 2020, or you could promote and support him, which is what Fox News was doing over that same time period. Organizations that he spoke favorably about would become more influential and more relevant because his supporters are very actively engaged. And then, you have people like Breitbart News who, once they rise to that primary position, once they rise to a level of influence, they speak favorably about him to keep them on his good side. And the reason I'm talking about all of this is that this whole Yeehan Mayhem situation is just a really funny way to examine the way that feedback loops and engagement-based incentives can lead to an initially small group seemingly being catered to in a way that not only elevates and grows them, but also incentivizes others to try and cater to them. In an engagement-based economy, the groups that are the most assertive with their engagement are the ones that future communication will be geared towards by corporations and people who want to make a buck. It's why Opera GX is out there doing the same sassy shit on Twitter that Wendy's was doing a decade ago. It's why certain content creators continue to use people like Big Red or Nita Sarkeesian in their thumbnails. It's why every Overwatch Twitter account that wants a hit tweet is just going to default to trashing Mercy or Mercy mains. And it's not to say it's always a bad thing either. This is a neutral concept that can be applied to shift the discourse in any direction. I think that Yeehan shippers getting an esports team to make a gay shit part of their kind of official branding, or extra official branding, is actually really funny and honestly probably a net good in terms of what it says about how queer people in esports are being treated more as being in on the joke as opposed to being the butt of the joke. To answer the question at the beginning of the video, which was why is Florida Mayhem posting Yeehan on main, it's because Yeehan shippers are an actively engaged, very online community that you can target posts at pretty easily, who will significantly boost your baseline social media engagement as an Overwatch League team without having to dip into anything particularly negative or polarizing that could potentially harm your brand, all while maintaining a bit of a tongue-in-cheek, joking nature about it all. Mayhem has tested the waters and found it beneficial to associate their brand identity with Yeehan, and in turn, Yeehan shippers have decided that they approve of the way that Mayhem are catering to them here and there, and have effectively agreed to continue offering that engagement whenever they post that Yeehan content. Mayhem keeps doing it because it helps them bring in new followers and boost them in the algorithm, which helps communicate their serious news about their brand to the widest range of the target audience possible. And Yeehan keeps doing it because they want a brand with money and resources to keep investing in making content about the cowboy and the ninja. And also probably a little bit because they're just curious how far they can push a brand on this, since it's only a matter of time before one of the other teams realizes the level of engagement they'd get from talking about Yeehan the way they were talking about Lifeweaver. Anyways, that's going to be the end of this video. Thank you very much for watching. I had a lot of fun talking about this thing that I've been thinking about for a while, and just kind of wanted to rant about while I work on another bigger video. I did a little test on Twitter of the theory myself before starting work on this, and it went great, and since that Spike Chunsoft video I'm working on is probably going to be a bit delayed regardless, I figured this would be a fun way to tide you over and make sure you guys don't forget about me. And also, frankly, if brands are allowed to capitalize on the gays, then so am I, goddammit. If you've enjoyed this, be sure to subscribe and check out my other video essays. There's also going to be probably another bonus video coming out in the next week or so about Barbie Girl, Overwatch, Rule 34, and how corporations lose control of their characters, and all kinds of other fun stuff that you won't want to miss, I promise. You can also find me on Twitch at twitch.tv/thevivaros or Twitter at thevivaros, and if you're watching this video on the day it came out, you should come over to Twitch for some games with viewers. We're going to be playing King of the Castle, which is a game where you're all trying to usurp my throne and seize power from me while fending off other chatters. If that sounds fun, there's no purchase necessary, and you're welcome to join. If you'd like to support what I'm up to on this channel and get a chance to vote for future content, you can become a channel member for $5 a month by clicking the join button below. Next month's poll will start on August 1st and will include these 3 returning topics, as well as 2 brand new top secret ones. Thank you very much to all my current channel members. Insert name here: Mini Q, Olesp, Cage the Orc, Surtur Z, The Afro of Doom, Nballs, Xander K, Vost, Kirby PPG, Alex Stone, Nemo the Survivor, Indy D, Destiny, Remy, Vamplin, Popsnack, Lenny, Connor, Circo, Damp_Weasel, Nature Big Fan, Yoshi of the Wire, and Peggy, Catlover192, Windex the Great, Sourdough, Scarlight, and Illuma Riley. Thank you all for your support, and I hope to see you around again soon.